Have you ever felt the ache of being ignored? The weight of checking your phone only to be met with silence? You give, you reach out, you stay loyal, but they don't text back, they don't call, and worst of all, they don't seem to notice your presence until it's gone. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about staying visible, proving your worth, and always initiating contact is a lie? A comfortable, popular, but ultimately disempowering lie. Most people think that being available equals being valued, that the more effort you show, the more likely someone will see your worth. But what if the opposite is true? What if your silence has more power than your words? What if your absence is more magnetic than your presence? We've all been there, wondering if they're thinking about us, hoping for that sudden message, checking if they've seen our story. That cycle creates an invisible prison of anxiety, disguised as affection. But you're not here to be trapped. You're here to take control. You're here to reclaim your energy. This isn't about playing games. This is about understanding the ancient wisdom of Stoicism and applying it to the modern chaos of texting, dating, and relationships. Stoic relationships aren't built on overexposure or desperation. They're built on composure, self-respect, and controlled presence. And when you learn to embrace that stillness, when you stop showing up for people who don't show up for you, everything changes. They notice, they wonder, they chase. You're about to discover how your silence can speak louder than your begging, how your detachment can reset their behavior, and how your healing will make you unreachable in the best way possible. This isn't just advice. This is transformation. It's time to stop knocking on closed doors. It's time to flip the power dynamic with confidence, with clarity, and with calm. Because what's coming next isn't just going to make them call or text. It's going to make you question if you even want them anymore. Stay with me. You're not just learning how to let go, you're learning how to evolve. And when you finish this, you'll never see silence the same way again. 1. Silence speaks louder than words. Silence. So many fear it, yet so few understand its power. In a world where messages are sent in milliseconds and validation is just a double tap away, we've grown addicted to noise, to feedback, to affirmation. But let me ask you this. What happens when you stop responding, stop chasing, stop explaining? What happens when the constant hum of your presence goes quiet? That's when the world listens. That's when the people who took you for granted suddenly start to wonder, because silence isn't empty, it's strategic. And more than that, it's revealing. When you were always available, always texting first, always showing up, they didn't need to think, they didn't need to feel, they didn't need to reflect. Your presence was a given, your attention was guaranteed. And because of that, your worth was never fully realized. Think about the sun. It rises every morning, warms us, gives us light, and yet we rarely stop to acknowledge it until it doesn't rise. Only then do we panic. Only then do we ask, where did it go? Your energy works the same way. When freely given, constantly. Offered and never withdrawn, it becomes invisible, it becomes expected. But remove it, and suddenly your silence screams. Suddenly it becomes the loudest thing in the room. This is not about withholding love or manipulating outcomes. It's about shifting from noise to presence, from compulsion to composure. How often have you sent a message just to prove you care? How many times have you double-texted, just checking in, hoping your effort would trigger theirs? You thought you were being kind, loyal, consistent, but really, you were erasing the mystery that builds attraction. You were removing the space where curiosity grows. Stoicism teaches us that external validation is fleeting and unreliable. What matters is how you respond to what you cannot control. And if someone's indifference shakes your peace, it's not because of them. It's because you've tied your worth to their attention. That's the chain, that's the weight. And silence, intentional, grounded, confident silence, is the key to breaking it. Let them feel the gap. Let them feel the quiet. Let them experience a world without your emotional labor. Because it's only in your absence that they will start to hear your presence. Have you ever noticed how quickly they text when you stop trying? How their curiosity spikes when you no longer update your story, like their mind finally asks, "What happened?" to them. That's not an accident, that's pattern disruption. And it's not cruelty, it's clarity. When you stop showing up like clockwork, they are forced to notice the empty space where your energy used to be. And in that space, they feel what you were giving all along, the warmth, the light, the attention. Suddenly, they miss the little things they used to ignore. And here's the truth, they never missed you before because you never left. You never created the vacuum needed for reflection. You were the emotional janitor, always cleaning up the mess, always smoothing over silence with noise, always overcompensating for what they didn't give. But what if you stopped? What if you stopped knocking on a door that clearly won't open? What if you stopped filling the silence and just sat with it instead? That's where your power lies. That's where Stoic relationships begin, where you no longer beg to be understood, you simply become understood by your absence. This is the first law of emotional gravity. People do not notice consistency. They notice disruption. They notice change. They notice disappearance. When you disappear, even for a little while, you challenge their assumptions. You challenge the idea that you'll always be there. And that makes them wonder. That makes them curious. And curiosity is the birthplace of emotional pursuit. So, let them wonder. Let them miss what they thought would always be there. Your silence is not about being mysterious for the sake of manipulation. It's about reclaiming your worth from a system that undervalues it. You were never supposed to hand out unlimited access to someone who wouldn't walk halfway. You were never meant to explain yourself repeatedly to someone who didn't listen the first time. And you definitely weren't created to base your value on someone else's inconsistency. Stoic relationships don't flourish on constant reassurance. They thrive on mutual respect, space, and understanding. And sometimes that understanding doesn't come from another conversation. It comes from your absence. Have you ever been in a room full of noise and only noticed what's missing when it suddenly goes quiet? That's how powerful silence can be. That's the mirror it holds. And that mirror doesn't just reflect your absence. It reflects their behavior, their neglect, their expectations. When you stop knocking, you stop proving. And when you stop proving, you start becoming. You begin to embody the calm strength that Stoicism preaches, the kind that doesn't rise and fall based on someone else's mood, the kind that observes, accepts, and acts with discipline. That's the kind of strength people feel in your silence. It's not passive, it's potent. It makes them ask questions they never asked before. Did I lose them? Were they always this grounded? Why do I suddenly care? And no, not all of them will respond. Not all of them will reach back. But those who matter, those who genuinely felt your presence, will be pulled back not by desperation, but by realization. They'll feel your worth in its withdrawal. And if they don't, then that silence served a greater purpose. It revealed the truth. Because if your absence reveals their disinterest, your presence was the only thing holding it all together. And that's not love. That's imbalance. That's charity. And you are not a charity case. You are a force, a presence, a person whose energy is sacred. And if they cannot see that, then your silence has done what your words never could. So stop, fearing the quiet, embrace it, sit in it, let it sharpen your focus, let it fortify your mind. Let it remind you that your value isn't in how much noise you can make to be noticed, but in how grounded you can be in your own self-worth. That's the foundation of Stoicism. That's the essence of Stoic relationships. A person who knows their value never begs to prove it. They let the world feel the absence and come to its own conclusion. Your silence is not empty. It's full of the answers they ignored when you were speaking. It's the reset they never saw coming. It's the space where true connection either grows or dies. And that's the truth you've been avoiding. That's the pain you've been numbing with effort. But now you're letting the silence speak, and it will say more about your worth than any message, any call, any paragraph ever could. Watch. They will notice. They will think. They might even come back, but you'll be so grounded, so full, so centered that their attention will feel like a bonus, not a necessity. And that, my friend, is when the game changes. That is when the power shifts. Not with another text, not with another chase, but with your silence fully owned, deeply felt, and never again undervalued. 2. Neediness repels, confidence attracts. Neediness is like a scent, subtle but unmistakable. You think you're hiding it, you believe your texts are casual, your follow-ups are polite, but deep down you know when you're reaching from a place of fear. And so do they. There's a difference between expressing interest and bleeding insecurity. The moment you cross that invisible line, the dynamic shifts, and whether you realize it or not, you're no longer speaking to the person, you're pleading to your anxiety. Let's strip this down to its raw truth. People aren't repelled by kindness, effort, or love. They're repelled by the unspoken pressure that says, "Please complete me." That energy suffocates. That energy makes someone feel responsible for your emotional balance, and no one wants to carry that. Not in friendship, not in love, especially not in the beginning. Now pause and reflect. Have you been texting someone, not because you genuinely wanted to connect, but because you felt uneasy when you didn't hear from them? Have you reread old messages, trying to decode what went wrong, spiraling into a loop of self-doubt, wondering what you could say or do to pull them back? That's not connection, that's compulsion. That's anxiety in disguise. Stoicism teaches us not to cling to what we cannot control. Yet when you let neediness dictate your actions, you are giving your power to the very thing that has proven inconsistent. You're saying, "My peace is in your hands." And they feel that. Every double text, every story reaction, every midnight just thinking of you after hours of silence. Those aren't acts of affection. Those are acts of surrender. And Stoic relationships are not built on surrender. They are built on self-possession. Here's what you need to understand. The more you chase, the more someone runs. The more you reach, the more they recoil. Not because you're unworthy, but because your energy is screaming, "Please validate me." That energy feels heavy. It feels desperate. It feels like a trap, even if your intentions are pure. And people run from traps. But here's the shift. The moment you stop needing, you become needed. The moment you stop checking your phone for their message and start checking in with yourself, everything changes. Confidence isn't loud. It's not brash. It's quiet, calm, rooted. It's the person who doesn't react to silence with panic, but with presence. It's the person who doesn't scramble for attention, but allows attention to find them in their stillness. That's the kind of person who magnetizes, because neediness says, "I am not enough without you." Confidence says, "I am enough, regardless of you." And people feel the difference immediately. They may not say it aloud, but their behavior reflects it. The person you once chased will start chasing you, not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing one. Because you finally remembered who you were before anxiety took the wheel. Let me ask you something. How many times have you felt drained after a simple conversation, not because of the words exchanged, but because you were hoping every reply would prove your worth? That's the cost of neediness. It exhausts you, it eats away at your dignity, and it leaves you more empty than you were before you hit send. Stoicism reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And in the realm of relationships, mastery begins when you stop outsourcing your self-esteem. You've been taught to give, to be loyal, to show up, but you were never taught the value of restraint, of holding back, of not reacting. Confidence isn't about how you perform in the spotlight, it's about how you carry yourself in the silence. When you don't hear from them, do you spiral or do you stay grounded? When you see them online but get no reply, do you explode internally or do you remember your worth? That is the real test. And every time you choose stillness over scrambling, you become more powerful. Imagine this: you're a magnet, but you've been flipped. Your energy is repelling what you want because it's driven by lack. The solution isn't to chase harder, it's to realign. Flip the polarity, let go of the urge to fix, to chase, to prove, and something strange will happen. They'll feel the shift. The absence of your desperation creates presence. It makes them feel the void where your need used to be. That void is not empty, it's powerful, because it forces them to confront a new reality. You're no longer waiting, you're evolving. This is not about punishing anyone, this is about liberating yourself. When you reclaim your focus, redirect your energy and choose yourself, you stop bleeding effort into someone who barely notices. And suddenly they notice. Why? Because the noise is gone, the pressure is lifted, and what's left is presence. Pure, calm, self-assured presence. That's irresistible, especially in a world full of emotional beggars. The person who walks with calm becomes unforgettable. Your calm isn't detachment, it's discipline. It's knowing that true love can't be forced or fetched. It flows. And if it doesn't flow toward you, you don't chase it. You create a space where it either finds you or frees you. Think about this. If someone only responds when you chase, is that love? Or is that a transaction built on your exhaustion? You were not born to chase someone into loving you. You were not born to beg someone to stay. You were born to rise, to attract, to embody. And attraction is born in confidence, not need. So the next time you feel the urge to send a message just to feel something, pause. Ask yourself, is this coming from strength or from fear? Because if it's fear, it's a lie. The lie that says if you don't remind them of your existence, they'll forget you. That's the voice of panic, not power. And panic never produces peace. So instead of chasing them, chase your peace. Instead of sending that text, send your energy inward. Build something, move your body, read, create, reflect, return to yourself. That's where your value is. That's where your magnetic field is formed. In the space where you are no longer driven by who shows up, but by how deeply you've shown up for yourself. Stoicism is not cold indifference. It's warm inner stability. It's choosing not to react out of compulsion, but to respond with clarity. It's the space between stimulus and response where your power lives. And when you live from that space, you no longer fear who texts back. You no longer fear silence, you welcome it, because in the silence you grow stronger. And the stronger you become, the more your energy speaks without a word. That's the energy they remember. That's the energy they chase. And if they don't, then they were never drawn to you, they were drawn to your anxiety. And that is not love. That is emotional leeching. You're no longer available for that. You are building stoic relationships, ones built on calm, clarity, and mutuality. Not chasing, not proving, just being. So if you felt the burn of one-sided effort, if you've questioned your worth after being ghosted, let this be your turning point. Let this be your awakening. You are not too much. You were just offering yourself to someone who didn't know how to receive. Now you receive yourself, fully, powerfully, and that is the energy they will never forget. If this resonates, if it hits you deep, then like this video and comment number 1 below to let us know. And if you're ready to keep rising, keep building that calm, magnetic presence, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. There's so much more to unlock. Let's grow together. 3. Your reaction teaches them how to treat you. Every interaction you have is a lesson, and whether you realize it or not, you are constantly teaching others how to treat you, not by your words, not by your expectations, but by your reactions. You don't set the tone of a relationship by what you say you want, but by what you allow when your needs aren't met. Let that sink in. The moment someone ignores your message and you still respond enthusiastically the next time, you're teaching them that their silence holds no consequence. The moment they cancel plans last minute and you accept it with no hesitation, you're affirming that your time isn't valuable. And the moment you make excuses for their patterns of absence, you are showing them that your boundaries are flexible, that your standards are negotiable. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Stoicism demands that we take radical responsibility for our inner lives. If someone consistently gives you the bare minimum and you continue to respond with full effort, you are reinforcing their behavior with your own energy. You are teaching them that they can show up halfway and still be fully received. That's not kindness, that's conditioning. That's the silent training we engage in, often without noticing. Ask yourself, how many times have you smiled through disappointment, stayed quiet to avoid conflict, responded quickly even when their replies were delayed? How often have you absorbed mistreatment in the name of love, mistaking self-sacrifice for strength? These moments accumulate, and over time, they create a blueprint for how others treat you. Your silence in the face of neglect becomes a signal that you will tolerate more of it. Your eagerness in the face of apathy teaches them that effort is optional. And once a pattern is set, it becomes difficult to break, not because others won't change, but because you've already taught them. They don't need to. That's the hard truth. And it stings, not because it blames you, but because it reveals the power you didn't know you had. But here's the beauty of this truth. If you trained them with your reaction, you can untrain them with your transformation. If you've reinforced disrespect with availability, you can rewire the dynamic by reclaiming your space, your silence, your standards. Imagine for a moment that you stopped replying instantly, that you no longer laughed at dry responses just to keep the conversation alive, that you stopped justifying emotional inconsistency with imagined scenarios like, maybe they're just busy, or maybe they're going through something. What would happen? At first, probably nothing. Silence would echo. Doubt might creep in. But then, the pattern would break. The script would flip. They'd feel the unfamiliarity of your absence, the discomfort of not being met with your usual enthusiasm. And in that discomfort, reflection begins. Not always immediately, not always deeply, but the shift would begin. Why? Because humans respond to contrast, and when you stop reacting the same way, they have no choice but to reevaluate. This is not about withdrawing to manipulate. It's about stepping back to observe, about creating a gap where clarity can breathe. When someone knows that no matter how little they give, you will still show up with more, there is no incentive to change. But when you begin to mirror their effort, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, you reset the expectations. You draw a line in the sand that says, I no longer betray myself to keep you comfortable. That's the beginning of emotional sovereignty. And that's where Stoicism thrives. Not in coldness, but in clarity, in understanding that how you show up for yourself is the strongest message you can send. Think of every situation where you felt disrespected. What was your reaction? Did you address it? Did you pull back? Or did you bury the discomfort and move forward as if nothing happened? Most people choose the latter. Why? Because conflict feels risky. Because we fear loss more than we fear disrespect. But Stoic relationships are not afraid of discomfort. They embrace it as a pathway to growth. And growth often looks like distance. It looks like unlearning the habit of overgiving. It looks like choosing not to explain yourself to someone who never asked to understand you. You don't need to punish anyone to make your point. You don't need dramatic exits or fiery ultimatums. All you need is a consistent, grounded, unshakable sense of what you will and will not allow. That consistency will teach them faster than any conversation ever could. Your calm refusal to tolerate less will echo louder than any emotionally charged argument. Because when someone expects you to react and you don't, they notice. When they expect you to chase and you don't, they feel it. When they expect forgiveness without change and you choose space instead, they're forced to reckon with their own patterns. And in that reckoning, transformation becomes possible. Not guaranteed, not promised, but possible. Because not everyone will rise to meet your standard once it's raised. Some will leave, some will resist, some will try to test your resolve. That's not failure, that's filtering. When you stop rewarding half effort, those who only offer crumbs will fall away, and the space they leave behind will feel strange. At first, maybe even painful, but that space is sacred. It's where your peace grows, it's where your standards live, it's where your new relationships will be built, not on performance, but on presence, not on need, but on respect. And it all begins with your reaction. So ask yourself, what are you reinforcing? What are you allowing, tolerating, overlooking? What are your reactions teaching the people around you? This is your moment to reclaim your role, not as a victim of circumstance, but as an architect of your experience. Stoicism teaches that it is not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Extend that further. It's not what they do that defines your value, it's how you respond to what they do. If you choose to respond with dignity, with restraint, with a calm sense of self-worth, then your entire emotional blueprint changes. You move from being reactive to being reflective, from being anxious to being anchored. And when others see that, when they feel that, they can't help but respond differently or walk away. Either is a win, because you're no longer bending. To be chosen, you're choosing. You're choosing peace over panic, clarity over chaos, and growth over familiarity. You're choosing to teach with your silence, your standards, your steady refusal to shrink. And that is the beginning of something unshakable. That is the heart of Stoic relationships, not perfection, but presence. Not dominance, but direction. Not performance, but principle. Let that be your legacy. Let your reaction be your revolution, because how you respond today teaches the world how to love you tomorrow. 4. Absence creates reflection. There is something unsettling about silence, not just for the one who chooses it, but for the one left behind in its echo. When you go quiet, when you stop showing up, when your energy no longer floods the space like it once did, something changes in the dynamic. At first, they may not notice. The absence might feel like peace to them, less pressure, more freedom. But over time, the stillness becomes a mirror that doesn't just reflect your withdrawal, it reflects their behavior, their apathy, their choices. And that reflection stings in a way no confrontation ever could. Because it's not your words that haunt them, it's your disappearance. You see, people expect presence, they expect access. When you've been the one to always initiate, to always check in, to always bridge the silence, your consistency becomes their comfort. But remove it, and that comfort turns into confusion. That's when the questions begin. Did I do something wrong? Why haven't they reached out? Are they really gone? That spiral of uncertainty is not cruelty, it's consequence. And it's not revenge, it's revelation. The revelation of how much they relied on your energy without ever matching it, of how deeply your presence supported the connection without their full participation. And now, in your absence, they're forced to confront what they didn't nurture. This is the part of Stoic relationships that feels the most powerful and the most painful. Because choosing silence is not easy. It goes against every instinct. Trained by emotional dependency, Your mind will scream at you to send just one message. Your fear will whisper that they'll forget you if you don't remind them. But Stoicism teaches us to hold still in the storm, to resist acting out of compulsion, to trust that if something is real, it doesn't need to be chased, it will return with clarity. So you hold, you wait, you remain, not in passivity but in power, in grounded, rooted, centered strength. And from that stillness, something begins to happen. They feel your absence. At first, it's subtle. They might notice the lack of notifications. They might scroll through their messages and wonder why your name hasn't appeared. They might check your profile out of curiosity, wondering if you've moved on. And then, the doubt creeps in, the uncertainty, the fear. Because what once felt guaranteed now feels gone, and nothing triggers reflection like loss, not of love, but of access. That's when they remember, not just your messages, but the energy behind them, not just your presence, but the weight of it, the way you made them feel supported, seen, safe, even when they didn't acknowledge it. And now that it's missing, now that there's a void, they begin to truly feel it. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about no longer giving yourself to someone who didn't value you. Your absence is not a tactic. It's a truth. It's the truth that your energy is sacred, that your time is valuable, that your love is a privilege, not a right. And those who didn't see that before are now being invited through silence to reflect. Some will lean in, some will reach out, some will change. Not all, not always. But those who do, those who genuinely felt the loss of your presence, will show it. And not through grand gestures or apologies, but through consistency, presence, and realignment. They'll come back different, wiser, clearer, because they've seen themselves in your silence, and they've understood what words never could explain. Others will fade away. They'll resist the discomfort of reflection and choose distraction instead. That's not a loss, that's clarity. Because if someone can walk away from your absence and feel nothing, they were never truly connected to your presence. Let them go, wish them well, and keep walking, because your absence is not just a tool, it's a threshold, a doorway between who you were and who you're becoming. And who you're becoming no longer settles, no longer chases, no longer explains. Who you're becoming speaks through energy, through presence, through peace. And peace, my friend, is magnetic, not because it pulls others in, but because it filters who stays. This is the transformation. You were once the one who filled every silence. Now, you are the one who lets the silence do the speaking. You were once the one who feared being forgotten. Now you are the one who remembers your own worth, and that shift is powerful beyond measure, because it moves you out of reaction and into creation, out of panic and into presence, out of need and into knowing. And in that knowing, you become untouchable, not unreachable, but unshakable. Because the people who matter, the people who see your value, will not need to be reminded. They will feel the difference. They will notice the absence. They will reach. And even if they don't, you'll be at peace, because you'll know that your silence spoke the truth. And that truth is this: I will no longer beg to be seen. I will no longer trade my peace for presence. I will no longer give to those who only take. I am not punishing. I am protecting. I am not withdrawing. I am rising. And if you're watching this, feeling every word, nodding through the pain and the clarity, then this is your moment. This is your turning point. Embrace the silence. Let it work for you. Let it heal you. Let it teach them what you could never say out loud. And if this message hit home, if this video made you feel seen and stronger, then like this video and comment number 1 below. Let this be your declaration that you are stepping into your power. And if you want to keep growing, keep healing, keep building your foundation of peace and power, then subscribe right now. Because we're not done. This is just the beginning, and the next chapter is even deeper. Let's rise together. 5. Detachment is not coldness, it's control. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. People often confuse it with coldness, with apathy, with shutting down emotionally. But true detachment isn't about not feeling. It's about feeling everything and still choosing not to be controlled by any of it. It's about standing in the center of your emotional storm and refusing to let it pull you under. It's about recognizing that you can care deeply and still walk away. You can love fiercely and still choose silence. You can long for someone and still choose peace. That is not coldness. That is mastery. That is the essence of Stoicism, and it's where real power is born. Let's face it, detachment doesn't feel natural at first. When you've spent so much time tying your sense of worth to someone else's attention, the act of pulling back feels like a betrayal of your heart. You'll tell yourself that staying attached means you care, that reaching out means you're brave, that sending one more message means you're fighting for love. But here's the truth. Clinging is not courage. It's fear. The fear that if you stop trying, they'll forget you. The fear that if you let go, you'll lose them forever. The fear that your silence will make the distance permanent. But what if I told you that detachment is not the end? That in many cases, it's the beginning of real connection, not with them, but with yourself. That the only way to truly see who is meant for you is to step back and allow space for reflection, for recalibration, for truth to emerge. You see, when you're always available, always initiating, always holding on, there's no room for clarity. There's no room for the other person to feel the consequences of their absence. No reason for them to reflect on their own behavior. You are doing all the work. You are carrying the emotional weight. But when you detach, not in anger, not in spite, but in quiet confidence, you shift the entire dynamic. You send a message, not with words, but with presence. You say, I care, but I care more about my peace. You say, I love you, but I love myself more. That's the kind of detachment that doesn't push people away. It pulls the right ones in, because the ones who only stayed for your emotional availability, for your endless giving, for your constant presence, they'll fade when you detach. And that's good, that's necessary. But the ones who see your worth, who feel your absence, who recognize the space where your energy once lived, they'll pause, they'll reflect. They'll move differently, not because you begged, but because you became still. That's the paradox. The less you reach, the more they feel. The less you explain, the more they question. The less you chase, the more they notice. But none of that happens if you keep reacting from fear. Stoic relationships are not built on emotional outbursts. They are not built on panic or urgency. They are built on presence, on patience, on power rooted in stillness. So ask yourself, are you holding on because you truly believe this connection is mutual and strong? Or are you holding on because you're afraid to face yourself without it? Are you reaching out because there's growth and reciprocity, or because silence feels too loud? Detachment requires honesty. It requires you to face the parts of you that want to scream, "Don't let go," and respond with, "It's time to let be." It asks you to step back not with bitterness, but with clarity, to trust that what is meant for you will never need to be forced, that you don't need to chase what aligns with your peace. Imagine this. You walk into a garden you've been watering alone. Every day you bring the sunlight, the effort, the nurturing, and the other person, they just show up to admire the flowers, but they never plant, they never water, they never stay when it rains, and one day you stop. You put the watering can down. You leave the gate open, but you stop tending to it. You start tending to yourself, and slowly the garden changes. It becomes less about them and more about you. That's detachment. That's control. You are no longer the emotional gardener for someone else's comfort. You are no longer the one trying to grow connection from one side. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to walk away from the version of yourself that tried so hard, that believed so deeply, that loved so openly. But you are not abandoning that version. You are evolving it. You are saying, thank you for trying, but now it's time to choose me. That's where control begins. Not in manipulation, not in silence as punishment, but in silence as boundary. Detachment is not about being cold to them, it's about being warm to yourself, about no longer tolerating what drains you, about understanding that the only thing you truly control is your response. And when you choose that response with intention, with calm, with clarity, you become untouchable. Not in the sense that no one can reach you, but in the sense that no one can shake you. That's what they feel when you detach. That's what draws them back. Because detachment isn't just a lack of contact. It's a presence they can't ignore. It's the quiet that says, I'm no longer available for the emotional chaos you bring. It's the boundary that says, I will not keep giving what isn't appreciated. And it's the self-respect that says, I can love and still leave. I can feel and still stay silent. This level of control is not easy. It takes practice. It takes discipline. It takes faith that your value doesn't need to be proven, only remembered. And the more you remember it, the less you chase reminders from others. That's the beauty of detachment. It doesn't require anyone else to change. Only you, only your perspective, only your willingness to choose peace over panic, composure over chaos. In Stoicism, there's a belief that true freedom lies in the ability to master your inner world. That means being okay even when the world outside feels uncertain. That means staying centered even when someone else withdraws. That means knowing that the value of your love doesn't decrease just because someone couldn't receive it. Your worth is not up for negotiation. And detachment is how you enforce that truth. Every time you choose not to reach out when you're anxious, you strengthen your control. Every time you resist the urge to send one more message just to feel seen, you anchor your self-respect. Every time you sit with the discomfort of silence instead of breaking it to feel better, you build emotional muscle. And that muscle becomes your foundation. The foundation of stoic relationships, the foundation of magnetic energy, the foundation of peace that no one can take from you. So no, detachment isn't cold. It's courageous. It's the decision to stop fighting for someone who won't meet you halfway. It's the choice to stop proving your value and start living it. It's the quiet refusal to let your emotions be dictated by anyone else's inconsistency. You are not heartless. You are healing. You are not fake. You are focused. You are not withdrawn. You are wise. And wisdom says, I no longer go where I'm tolerated. I only go where I'm respected. I only go where effort meets effort, where energy is mutual, where peace is preserved. Let that be your guide. Let that be your grounding. Because once you embrace detachment, not as defense but as direction, you'll never feel desperate again. You'll never need to ask, what did I do wrong? Because you'll know it's not about wrong or right. It's about alignment. And what aligns with your peace will never require you to betray yourself. That is the power of detachment. That is the power of control. And that, above all else, is the path to your highest self. 6. When you heal, you become unreachable. Healing isn't a moment. It's a movement, a shift so profound it changes the gravitational pull of your energy. It's the silent, unseen transformation that happens not when someone apologizes, not when closure arrives, but when you finally stop needing either. It begins the day you decide your peace is more important than their attention. It deepens the moment you stop checking your phone for their name and start checking in with your own soul. Healing doesn't come with fanfare. It comes with stillness, with presence, with the calm realization that what you were chasing wasn't love, it was validation. And what you were giving wasn't just time or effort, it was pieces of your spirit to someone who was never holding space for it. When you heal, you become unreachable, not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer staying in places that kept breaking you. You're no longer responding to breadcrumbs. You're no longer auditioning for someone who couldn't see your worth the first time. You become unreachable to the version of them that only responded when you chased. Unreachable to the dynamic that drained you. Unreachable to the pattern that left you questioning your value. And ironically, that's when they start to feel your presence more than ever, because you're no longer pouring it into their hands. You're pouring it into yourself. Picture this. For months, maybe years, your emotions revolved around their availability. Their texts determined your mood. Their silence triggered your spirals. You were orbiting them, adjusting your light, your timing, your availability based on their gravity. But healing reverses the orbit. You become the center again, not because you're self-absorbed, but because you're self-honoring. You stop trying to prove your worth and start living it. You stop needing their attention to feel secure and start finding security in your stillness. That stillness is magnetic. That silence, when it's rooted in peace instead of punishment, carries a different weight. It's the kind of silence that lingers, that echoes, that haunts, not with guilt but with realization. They realize they never truly saw you, because they never had to. You were always there, always waiting, always available. But now, you're not. Now the void where your attention used to live starts to grow, and it speaks. It tells them you've changed, that you're no longer playing small just to be chosen, that you're no longer holding on to the hope that they'll suddenly wake up. Because you've woken up, you've seen yourself clearly, maybe for the first time in years. And in that clarity, you've chosen elevation over explanation, expansion over expectation. Healing is not passive, it's a decision repeated every day to no longer betray yourself just to feel loved. It's the moment you stop rewriting texts to make them sound less emotional. It's the night you let the silence stretch out without trying to fill it. It's the morning you realize you didn't think about them first thing and feel a strange sense of freedom. This is what Stoicism looks like in action, not detached from feeling but unchained by it, not numb but navigated by clarity. Stoic relationships begin with self-relationship, the one where you no longer abandon yourself to be accepted. And in healing, you become someone entirely new. Someone who can stand in front of the mirror and say, even if they come back, I'm not sure I want them now. Not from bitterness, but from balance. Because healing opens your eyes to all the ways you were shrinking, all the times you said, it's okay, when it wasn't. All the effort you gave that wasn't matched. All the silence you endured without reciprocity. And you start to raise the standard, not for them, but for you. What you once called love, you now see as anxiety. What you once called loyalty, you now see as self-abandonment. What you once accepted as chemistry, you now recognize as trauma bonding. And with that awareness comes power, the kind of power that doesn't need validation to feel strong. The kind of power that doesn't need closure to move on. The kind of power that chooses peace over performance, truth over tolerance. They will notice, maybe not right away, maybe not dramatically, but they will feel it. They will feel the absence of your effort, the lack of your emotional labor, the silence where your reassurance used to live. They may reach out casually at first, a simple hey, a story reaction, a memory, not because they suddenly changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer reactive, you're reflective. Because you've stopped needing their attention to feel enough. And that shift, that internal, irreversible transformation is felt. It shifts the entire frequency of the relationship. You've stopped chasing. You've started choosing. And what you're choosing now is so much more than a person. It's a state of being, a mindset, a way of moving through life where your self-worth is not up for negotiation. That's the part they didn't see coming. They thought that you'd always be one message away, that your love was infinite and unconditional, and maybe it is. But now, so is your self-respect. Now, so is your inner peace. And in that combination, you become untouchable. They can't reach the new you with old behavior. They can't access this new version of you with outdated patterns. If they want to come back, they'll have to rise. They'll have to meet you where you are, not where you left them. And some will evolve, others won't. And either way, you'll be okay. Because healing taught you that you were never truly chasing them. You were chasing the version of you that you abandoned to keep them. And now that you've reclaimed that version, whole, grounded, clear, you don't need them anymore. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about what you're building, your peace, your purpose, your alignment. And the people who are meant to be part of that, they won't need to be convinced. They will feel it, they will match it, they will honor it. Because the energy you now carry doesn't beg, it invites. It doesn't cling, it commands. It doesn't chase, it attracts. That is the paradox of healing. That when you stop needing them, they start needing you. When you stop proving yourself, they start noticing your value. When you stop showing up uninvited, they start asking where you went. And by then you've changed so much that their return feels like a gift, not a goal. You've built a life so full, so vibrant, so grounded in peace, that any re-entry must enhance, not disrupt. This is your power. This is your peace. This is the quiet revolution of healing. And if this message resonated, if it spoke to that part of you that's tired of proving, tired of begging, tired of waiting, then like this video and comment number 1 below. Declare your shift, own your transformation. And if you want more, if you're ready to keep walking this path of growth, clarity, and calm, subscribe now. Because the journey of becoming unreachable to what once broke you is just the beginning. We're rising together, one silent, powerful step at a time. This journey hasn't been about silence for silence's sake. It's been about the profound discipline of choosing yourself in a world that teaches you to beg for what should be mutual. You've walked through the fires of neediness, through the illusions of validation, through the echoes of your own overgiving. And now, here you are, no longer chasing, no longer proving, no longer reaching for someone else to complete the story you were born to author. This isn't the end of connection, it's the beginning of clarity, because now you see that your presence is not common, your love is not cheap, your energy is not infinite. And that shift from availability to intentionality is what makes everything else possible. You've learned to let silence speak, to let absence mirror, to let detachment reveal. You've started healing, not by pushing people away, but by walking back toward yourself. The person you're becoming doesn't apologize for setting boundaries. They don't over-explain why they stopped responding. They don't water dead plants hoping they'll bloom. They know that stoic relationships begin within, and now you do too. You are the calm in the chaos, the presence in the noise, the anchor in your own storm. And from here on, everything changes, not because they come back, but because you no longer need them to, because you've remembered your worth. And that, more than anything, is the power that cannot be taken, shaken, or ignored. That is stoicism. That is sovereignty. That is you,